We experience life in a linear fashion, right? It feels like we move from point A to point B. We progress through our life and our growth from where I was to where I am now to where I am going in a seemingly straight line. Now, this is linearity. And as we are immersed in this human experience, linearity becomes something that seems irrefutable. Like you're saying, well, I definitely was there and now I'm here, and based on what I've experienced in that time, these are certain patterns that I know about myself. For example, you could say, I've had trouble with this in the past, or I've dealt with this struggle, I've had these karmas, if you will, come into my life and create blockages, create obstacles that have made XYZ difficult. However that might be, we begin to create a storyline around this linear experience that we're having, from this moving from point A to point B. But what if I told you that it might not be what it seems? You see, we have this word reality. What is real? R-E-A-L. And that's the same as the word R-E-E-L, right? A reel. And what is a reel? A reel is like a film reel, right? So when we go to the movies and they play the movie, the entire movie is on a reel. It's on a disc. And that whole storyline already exists. It's not being created as we're watching it. It already exists, but we are watching it from point A to point B, one frame at a time, in order to not have the experience all at once. So this is an example of what a quantum reality might look like, because we are in fact quantum beings having a human experience. But the fact that we are so immersed in this human version of reality, sometimes we can forget that we have access to quantum levels of things if we use our perspective correctly. Okay, so just like the film reel has already been created, and your life has been essentially mapped out from point A to point B and to point C all the way along the straight line, we know that as we carry on through life, we're probably going to experience a similar trajectory. However, what we don't realize is we have access to changing and altering timelines. And different timelines would mean vibrating on a different frequency. A different frequency that's going to allow us to access a different reel entirely. So while you have one reel that might have like a certain ending of that movie, this would be like, okay, well, here's the alternate ending. And there's several of those that we could have access to based on how we're choosing to perceive our own life and our own path. I want to give a really like concrete earthly example of this so it can make sense. Imagine you had to traverse some mountains to cross a country to get to a certain place. Okay, there's several ways you could do that, right? Imagine this was before cars and you had to walk, you had to traverse over that mountain. Maybe you had a wagon and some horses or something like that, and you had to bring it over this mountain pass. It'd be very difficult. It'd be very time consuming. It'd require a lot of resources to get over the top of it. Okay, so that's a certain reality. That's a certain outlook on reality. Then imagine now we're in the point of time, which is a higher frequency because it's further in the future, where we have cars, we have automobiles. Okay, so now you just have to drive through it. It's still going to take a while. You're still going to have to go up and down some hills. It's going to require some resources, sure. But then there's a level of, I need to cross over these mountains, but I'm just going to take a plane. I'm going to get in this plane and I'm going to fly over the mountains. Now, the mountains still exist, mind you. You're still going over the mountains. You're still passing through them. But each one of these represents a different amount of resistance and a different amount of ease of going through them, of flying over the top of it. So when people view their karmas, when people view certain things like, I have to overcome this in this life, a lot of times we end up subconsciously putting ourselves beneath the obstacle. Meaning we could just buy the plane ticket and fly over the top of them, but we choose to go the wagon way, to go through it and see these things as like an absolute difficulty that we have to go through in our life. And that was not the point. The point was not for you to suffer. The point was not for you to have to go through something just for it to be difficult, but maybe for you to learn the lesson of, I could overcome this, but I could do it in an easier way, from a higher frequency, from a higher timeline. I can choose which reel I'm going to have be my story. So the same way I mentioned at the beginning, we seem to view things in an A to B. What we don't often recognize is there are parallel versions of A to B, and oftentimes throughout our life, based on our frequency, based on the thoughts, feelings, the energies that we're putting out, the energies that we're attaching to and embodying, those can alter which parallel timeline we're on. So we might have A to B in one timeline, and then the next day we wake up and we're feeling different, and we're still experiencing A to B, but that's on a completely different timeline. Maybe it's close to the original one, but we're never quite moving in just a straight linear line. We're constantly jumping frequencies and jumping realities. And when you understand this, you understand that we are quantum beings that has access to higher timelines, timelines that could be easier, timelines that can lead you to more abundance, timelines that can free you from things that you ultimately would have to go through in this life. Oftentimes, whatever obstacles are put on our path, it's not necessarily that we have to face it head on. Sometimes it is. Sometimes that's necessary for our growth. But if it is, it means that we haven't learned the lesson of ideas that we could have, things we could do that can make that traverse over those mountains, so to speak, easier. That's the point. Once you've learned the lessons and once you've overcome it, just like this bridge that I'm walking on right now, this is a fantastic example. I could choose to walk my way through this stream, get my shoes wet and everything, and have to go through the rocks on the bottom, or we could have this bridge that goes over the top. It's simply a different timeline. Maybe I tried to cross the bridge over there. Maybe, and there was not a bridge over there. Do you see what I mean? But I'm over here, I'm on this specific timeline, and there's a bridge on this timeline because of the specific frequency that puts me in the specific place that I am. So you see, when you look at it like that, and I hope this is making sense, but when you look at it like that, you understand that there are multiple ways to overcome anything in your life. And even things that could be considered major obstacles in your life, there's always a way. There's always a smarter way that you could do it. There's always a higher frequency that you could embrace in order to overcome those things. Like I said, it's not perfect. You will still have to go over the obstacle. That is the thing. You will still have to traverse the mountain. You will still have to overcome the river and cross the river. There's just different ways and smarter ways that you could go about it. So given that, you can choose which timeline you're on. You can choose by your frequency which timeline you're on, because it's almost like a rail splitter for trains. You know how they have the lever, and you pull the lever and then the train goes from one track to another? We have that, but it exists in our consciousness. And that's the quantum version of ourself. And when we can get into ourselves, into our deep state self, and pick and choose how we're going to guide that train, how we're going to pick the rail that we're on, we can essentially not bypass obstacles in our life, but find much easier ways to traverse them and make our lives simpler, to the point that even if you have heavy karmas, heavy things to deal with in your life that are coming back to you, it can be inconsequential to you. It could be the same as imagine if we had wings, how much easier it'd be to fly. Imagine if we were beings that were still on 4 legs, how much more difficult it'd be to even have the society that we have now. These are all different versions of adaptations in the reality. I'm not saying you can grow wings magically, right? Wouldn't that be something? But what I am saying is that within yourself, you can choose to operate from a higher frequency where the things that would be challenging from a lower frequency aren't. And it can make life that much easier, can make the things that you go through that much smoother. And by that, you can recognize that you can be on a higher timeline and experience joy in your life. You can experience a joyful, successful, happy, free life, even if you have the heaviest of heavy burdens on top of you. It's a matter of frequency. It's a matter of outlook. And we have that choice. So given that, my friends, I hope this helps. I hope this makes sense. And I wish the best for you. Choose the best. Choose the smarter way. Choose the higher path. And everything's going to work out. You're going to be able to overcome everything that you need to overcome. And you could do it easier. You could choose how hard it's going to be. You could choose how easy it's going to be. and where you're going to end up in the end. We do have that choice of what the story is going to be and how the ending is going to look. But it's a matter of taking conscious responsibility for it right now. All right? Thanks so much for watching. I wish you the best and take care.